Okay. Mhm. Next portion of the screen. Share. Okay. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Everyone on Zoom can see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this first game, you have a question? Oh, let me hide the moose. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this first game was played by Smyslov with the white pieces against Kothauer in the year 1947. And you might look at this position, it looks like it's just equal material. Each side has two pawns, each side has a bishop, each side has a rook. Um, and you might think, okay, equal position, let's offer a draw, let's call it a day, right? But there's actually still life in this position. What would you guys evaluate this position as? Yeah, what do you think? No, 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 just evaluate. We're just evaluating right now. How would we evaluate this? Uh, Theron, how would you evaluate this?
White is winning.
Okay, someone says white's winning. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Uh, Ryan?
It's Rion, by the way.
Rian.
So I feel like it's around a draw, but maybe White has the advantage here because they have more activity.
Yeah, yeah, good. So I agree. So this is a slight plus for white. White has the more active pieces. Black's on the defensive. It's a little bit more passive, like the rook's more passive. Also, we have this passed G pawn, which can advance at any moment, and their passed pawn is firmly blockaded. So there's definitely a lot of progress that white can make here. This is like if you look at the computer, it's just a slight advantage, like plus 0.5. But that doesn't mean that there's no life left in this position. There is something to play for. Um, okay, so in the game, Smyslov started with Rook C7, as was mentioned before. And this is kind of an awkward move to face because what happens if, obviously, this is kind of an annoying pin. What happens if the king goes to E6 here? Yeah, bishop f5, and that would win the bishop. So in order to like get out of this pin, you have to step to e8, which is kind of awkward. You're kind of deactivating the king, and now we're starting to see that white can start to make some more progress. So g5 was played on the board. Um, the passed pawn, it makes sense to push it. There's no reason it's got enough support. Like the bishop on e4 will be able to support it once it goes to g6. Rook to d8, g6. Bishop to e6. And now this bishop plays a defensive role where it's going to be able to stop the pawn from queening should it try to step forward. And why not? Just play g7. Okay, so this is where things start to get a little bit complicated. So in the game, rook to d4 was played, but let's just say rook to d1 check, king to f2, rook d2, king g3, and rook takes b2. So this was a variation that Smyslov analyzed. And what do you guys think? How should white continue in this position to try to play for a win? Yeah, yes. Okay, bishop f5, we're trying to distract the bishop. So okay, let's say what if the bishop just retreats to g8? Rook c8. Can we go here? And then you lose the pawn. Yeah. So that doesn't quite work. Yeah. Okay, bishop c6. Good move. Bishop c6, king to d8. And what's your idea? What's the next move? Very good. Rook d7. Again, the bishop can't take. If you try to step closer to the pawn, then what happens? Yeah, rook d2 wins the rook because of the discovered check. Very good. So the king has to step here, and now we've really pushed this king away from this pawn. And now we can play the move bishop to d5. And what does this do? What's the idea? Yeah, good. Yeah. And then again, if bishop takes the rook, we can queen. Bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, then there's no way to stop promotion, right? Check, we just step up. And we're promoting with a check. So even if you try to go here, this comes with a check, so there's no time for a skewer. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of one relevant line to keep in mind that black doesn't have the ability to go for this pawn quite yet with rook d1 and rook d2. So rook d4, and now bishop f3. So bishop f3, Smyslov gave as a very good move. What does the bishop do on this square? Why is it good on this square as opposed to like let's say this square? Yeah. Okay. What square in particular? Uh, Rion.
Is it bishop to h5?
Okay, so we do have ideas of playing bishop h5, that's true.
Oh wait, could it also be c6? Bishop to c6?
Bishop c6 is an idea as well. I mean, we could have gone there if we wanted to go there, we could have gone there on this move though, right? But yeah, bishop here. Yeah. Yeah, it keeps control over d5. Any other squares? Yeah, in the back. Good. Yeah, g4 as well. So there's no rook g4 check, right? And e4, yeah, true. Not e1. Oh, d1, yeah. Uh-huh. So there's no checks. That's true. So yeah, definitely a lot of relevant squares that this bishop controls. Very good. Okay, so rook d3, bishop to e2. And now the rook gives a check on on g3, king to f2. And now it's kind of a little bit awkward for the rook. The rook doesn't have too many squares to go to. Um, like if you try to go to g6, what's wrong with that? Yeah, bishop h5. So rook g5, and now rook to a7, king to d8, bishop f3, bishop c4, and now we're starting to see the king is starting to improve itself. So one thing that you should look at when you're looking at when you're playing a practical endgame, notice that their king can't improve itself, but our king, we can improve our king. So we're going to be working with three pieces versus black's two pieces, and then eventually it's going to start to overwhelm black's defenses. Okay, so here probably a better defense would have been to stop the move king to e4. How can black try to stop king e4? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, bishop f5 would be one move, but then you do allow bishop d5, and then you're gonna queen. So not quite. Yep. Yeah, rook g4 would have been a more tenacious defense to stop king to e4. But instead bishop to b3, and that does allow the king to now step to this square. And now we have some ideas of playing bishop d5 to exchange bishops, and then we will eventually be able to queen. It's one less defender over this square. All right, bishop e6, bishop d5, and no tactics here like rook g4 check, and then this isn't working because the king can take. So bishop takes, king takes, and now the king is gonna try to get here in time to blockade the G pawn. Now king e6, what's the threat? Yeah, rook a8, checkmate. So you have to get that king out of there. Check. Now we want a pawn. And rook to g2. And what's a good way to just simplify the game into a winning end game here? This person. Yes. Yeah, so you can just queen, right? Or you can deliver a check as in the game and then queen. Same idea. Rook takes, king takes. and then the king and pawn endgame is going to be winning, right? So in this position, Coat Tower resigns. Okay, so let's go back to the first of all, any questions about that game? If we look back on this position here, it looks fairly equal, right? Okay, someone has a question. Morgana?
I accidentally had it right.
Oh, it was an accident. Okay. Um, but yeah, it looks like a very simple position. There's only five pieces on the board for each side, but yeah, as we saw, White was still able to apply pressure and eventually win the game. Yeah. This position's plus zero point 0.5. Yeah. So only a slight edge. Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Um, share screens back here. Slideshow. Okay. Okay, so everyone can see my screen on Zoom, the presentation?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so here are some questions that you should ask yourself when you're playing in a practical endgame. So, is Tempe a relevant factor? What do I mean by Tempe? Yeah, what do I mean? Yeah, kinda. Yeah, sorry, someone's raising their hand. Sorry, who just raised their hand? Morgana?
Oh. Tempe means like that you like attack someone's pieces and you win a move.
Yeah, so does anyone know like the literal translation, like what language Tempe comes from or tempo? It's Italian. So it's an Italian word comes from Italian. It just means time. So if I said is time a relevant factor, you guys might get confused. Like, is it time on your clock? When I say tempi, it's time on the board. Make sense? The difference? Yeah. So, questions to ask yourself, is tempi a relevant factor? So, like, do you have a pass pawn that you're racing against their pass pawn? That would be an example of where tempi would be a relevant factor, where you should count tempi. And what piece trades would be favorable, neutral, or unfavorable? So that's like more general terms you should be thinking about. Um, and this is where like having a theoretical understanding comes into play. So like if you're thinking about a position where you have a knight and a bishop, or sorry, a rook and a bishop and a couple pawns, and you're up a pawn, let's say, and your opponent also has a rook and a bishop, but they're down a pawn. Would you most likely think you would want to trade rooks or trade bishops if you want to play for a win? Yeah, rooks, right? Because there's a lot of rook endgames that are drawish even when you're up a pawn. So theoretically, yeah, you'll have better chances if you keep the bishops on the board. Yeah. Okay, so another thing to think about, what pawn weaknesses can I target? And also you want to think about what your opponent's plans are too, right? So like what can my opponent target? And then if you do have any targets that your opponent can put pressure on, should you defend them passively? Should you defend actively? Um, Another thing to think about, do I have any pass spawns? Does my opponent have pass spawns? Should I start pushing it? Should I try to get more support for them? And another really important thing is how can I reposition my pieces for maximum effect? So does anyone know what I mean by that? How can I reposition my pieces for maximum effect? What do I mean? Yeah, put the pieces on a better square or better, like the best squares in order to make sure that they're in the best position to help you win the game. So that could be to help you push your pass pawn, to help you maybe create an attack on the king. Sometimes king safety is relevant, right? In endgames, like it's not only about king activity, like getting your king in the center might actually be detrimental to your king safety. like if there's a lot of pieces still on the board. Um, okay, let's see. Um, okay, so we'll pause here for the for that and just go back. And let's look at a game where let's see. So someone posted in chat. Okay, that was a little while ago. All right. All right, everyone on Zoom, you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this next game was played by Ivanchuk versus Karpov, and this was a blitz game. So this was a game where practical decision making was very, very important. So Ivanchuk had the white pieces, Karpov had the black pieces. I want you guys to just take 2 minutes here just to study this position. Um, and I want you guys to think about those same kinds of questions that I posed to you in the presentation. So think about like what trades would benefit white here. It's white to move. Um, are there any passed pawns on the board? Should we start pushing the passed pawns? Does it need more support? King safety versus king activity. What's the more relevant factor here? So I'll give you guys a couple minutes just to think here. And yeah, so I'll give you 3 minutes. I'll give you 3 minutes. Yeah, you have a question? You want? I'm not telling. Yeah, very good insight, Ishan. We'll just take another 90 seconds before we discuss. Yeah, nice line, Randall. Nice line. Okay, so before we talk about like specific variations and stuff, let's just talk about general principles here. So first things first, is Tempe a relevant factor in this position? Yes, it is. Um, why is Tempe a relevant factor? Yeah. Yeah. Any other ideas? Why is Tempe a relevant factor here? Yeah. Yeah, their Black King, if we give it some time, might start migrating over to the queen side, right? And then be able to create a blockade on our pawn. So yeah, definitely another important factor there. So so time is definitely a relevant factor. So we have one of you mentioned we have a pass pawn, okay? So that's another thing we need to look at. Is this a pass pawn that we should just start pushing immediately? We mentioned that Tempe is a relevant factor. Do we have enough support for it? Do we want to start pushing it immediately? That's another thing we want to think about. What about trades? Like, so which piece trades would be favorable, neutral, or unfavorable? Let's start with favorable. What trade would be favorable? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, trading rooks would be a really good idea because rooks are really good against outside pass pawns, but what pieces aren't so good against outside pass pawns? Knights and kings, right? And kings. Like if we get into a king and pawn end game, we have an outside pass pawn, use that as a distraction, and then start taking all the other pawns, right? So yeah, knights and kings. Obviously, we can't trade kings, but if we do get into a king and pawn end game, that would also be favorable, right? Um, okay, so any other things you guys thought about? Yeah, you want to say the move you thought of? Um, Okay, well, let me think. Is there anything else that we went over? Tempe's relevant factor, peace trades. Um, okay, yeah, why don't you say the move? Yeah, king safety or king activity. Yeah, what do you guys think about that? Okay, so our king is actually a little it's it's not the safest thing. There's always like a knight jump that can come if we try to activate our king. Um, and there could be potential like of creating a blockade on a4, right? So I would say king activity is less relevant in this position. We already have like our rook and our knights that are in a prime position to or not a prime position, but they can definitely it's enough to help assist the pawn to allow it to promote. Okay, so what moves did you guys come up with here? I saw some good moves, some good lines in the Zoom chat as well. Let me look at the Zoom chat. Uh, Someone mentioned the move A4 in the Zoom chat. What do you guys think about A4 as a first move? Yeah. It loses a pawn? Okay. Yeah, so that's definitely something we should check. If we start pushing our pawn, how can black try to win it? Okay, so let's say A4, knight C3. Can we just push even further? A5. And let's say they try to attack it with like rook A8. What? Yeah, rook b8, right? And that's exactly what we were talking about. A rook trade would be favorable for us. So that forces the rook trade, rook takes, knight takes, and now that the rooks are traded, we can start to try to activate our king, or maybe even like there might be some ideas of distracting this knight and maybe being able to queen it. Yeah, so okay, let's see what happened in the game. So a4, yes, that was played in the game by Vanchuk, very strong move. And rook to c6 was played. Rook to c6, what is black's idea? Yeah. Yeah, rook a6. He wants to blockade this pawn. How can we put a stop to that? Yeah. Yeah, rook b6. Rook b6. And let's see, where can the rook go to avoid this trade? Like what happens if rook c7? That looks pretty natural. What would happen here? All right, Tharun.
Maybe here A5.
Okay, there's an even better move.
And I mean, my question was, why not Rook B8? Rook B8.
Here.
Yeah, Rook B8.
Okay, rook b8 check, king h7.
Knight F8.
Nice. Knight f8. That forces the king back to the back rank. So let's say king g8.
King G8, and then knight takes on E6.
Good. King h7.
I take the rook.
Very good. Yes. Very good. Okay, let me demonstrate that line. So rook b8 check, king h7, knight f8, king g8, knight takes e6, discovered check, right? And then that wins the rook. Okay, so a little tactic there. And that's relevant because like what other square can the rook go to? I mean, are you going to go right back to where you started? Maybe, maybe. Just admit that your last move was bad. But yeah, rook c5 is not possible. Rook c7 is not possible. In the game, Karpov traded rooks, but as we mentioned, this is a favorable trade for white. Knight takes, and yeah, the rest was a matter of technique, as we say. So what? What do you think? What's your guess? Yeah, this is winning for white. The king is way too far away to be able to assist in defending against the pawn. And as we mentioned before, theoretically, knights are really bad against outside pass pawns. So, like I mentioned, sometimes theoretical knowledge is also really good to have when you're playing a practical endgame. Theoretically, knights are really bad against outside pass pawns. Um, okay, so the king started to activate itself. King safety is less of a factor now with rooks traded. Now it can start to activate. A5, C3 check, king B3. And yeah, the king starts his migration just a little too late here. So why not A6 here? Yeah, knight C5. Good. So king B4, stopping knight C5, and here Karpov resigned. There's just really not a good way to stop. You can't really stop this. Knight D6. Yeah, the knight's just in a really awkward position. It really just can't deal with the outside pass pawn. Um, yeah, it's lagging. Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, I'll just lose a knight and you'll have another pass pawn to work with. Yeah. Yep, we'll be winning. Okay, so all right, is everyone on Zoom able to hear me still? It says my internet's unstable.
Yeah,
Yep.
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation and we'll go over, I think it's one more slide. You have a question? Just stretching? Okay. Share screen. I'll get faster at this one day. Slideshow. Okay. All right. So, um, yeah, it wouldn't be a proper lesson about practical endgames without mentioning the GOAT himself, Magnus Carlsen. Um, yeah, Magnus Carlsen, he is known for his incredible ability to win games that would otherwise be like very equal or very drawish. So, what makes him so special? What makes him have this ability to just beat other grandmasters and super grandmasters in this kind of way? It has to do with his style and his mentality. So his style, he's not like a very like he's not the best calculator in the world, but he's very quick. He's able to calculate very short variations very, very quickly. All right. So he also has a very good intuition. Anyone know what intuition is? Yeah. 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 Like the first thing you think of, or like your natural feel. Yeah, exactly. Instincts, your natural feel for the game. So he's very good instincts, very good intuition. He also has a very strong fighting spirit. So If he's losing, he'll fight to the bitter end. He won't resign very early unless it's very obvious that he's losing. But if it's like he's defending a worse endgame, he will fight to the very end. Um, and on the other hand, if it's a very equal position and most grandmasters would offer a draw, he will play those endgames to the bitter end as well. Keep trying to find ways to put pressure on his opponent and give. He also is really good at giving his opponent opportunities to go astray, to go wrong. Do you have a question back here? You see someone raising their hand? Okay. Um, Another thing about Magnus is he's a very accurate player, even in time pressure. Like he's a really good blitz player. So even in time pressure, he's very, very accurate. And he's a very objective player. He also has a very strong foundation in theoretical endgames. So he like studied basically all the endgames. I don't know if you've seen there's this one clip, I was trying to find it, of him playing chess at his board, and he's got this huge book on endgames that you can see it's all crumpled up and wrinkled. And you can tell he's been through this endgame book like probably like tens or even maybe hundreds of times, and it's just huge. So you can tell like he's definitely studied the end game very like way more than his the others in the best in the world. Yep. Carlson, what? Yeah, Carlson in a nutshell, yeah. Um, so yeah, so like I said earlier, like having a good foundation in theoretical end games gives you the confidence to simplify or steer the course of the game, like offer correct trades and just steer the game in a way that'll favor you. Because you know, like, okay, this rook end game is drawish, but this bishop and pawn end game is winning, for example. So you can try to steer the game in that kind of direction with your theoretical knowledge of like where you have the best chances to either win or to draw. And yeah, like I mentioned before, he gives his opponents opportunities to make mistakes. So that can look like making, useful waiting moves. You don't always have to rush, right? Like in the opening and middle game, there's a little more of a sense of urgency. But in the end game, that's where we can kind of usually take our time and try to implement plans, even like not necessarily showing our hand right away, right? So we can, play moves that don't actually have any kind of plan, but it makes our opponent think because it's like, okay, what are they trying to do? And that's kind of like a good practical method to try to get in our opponent's head. Um, okay, so I see some people have questions. So Rion, you're raising your hand. What do you have a question?
Yeah. So what if you like know it's a draw and it's like the end game? Should you still keep and you're low on time? Should you still keep fighting on? Or if you know it's a draw and you're low on time, do you just accept the draw?
Good question. So it really does depend on how confident you are in your own ability. Like if you are a good blitz and bullet player, and you're confident in your ability to play when you're low on time, like like um I almost never offer draws in end games because I'm confident in my ability to play quickly. So yeah, I personally usually play to the bitter end, but if you're not confident in your ability to play quickly, then it's your decision, right? So um but yeah, if it's just a drawish end game, then it should be relatively easy to play, right? Yeah. Okay, Surya, you also have a question.
What's the difference between a practical and theoretical endgame?
Yeah, so practical endgame, this is an endgame that you're going to see more often in like a real game. Whereas a theoretical endgame, these are endgames that are like more simple and they're more like we've already figured them out. So like have you heard of like the Lucena position, Philidor position?
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah. And also like endgames where you are theoretically able to checkmate. So like if there's no pawns on the board and you have a knight and a bishop versus a lone king, would you be theoretically be able to checkmate with that
Yeah,
material? Yeah.
yeah, you can.
Yeah, so those are examples of theoretical endgames that you can try to simplify into. If you know it's winning, then it's very, very helpful. Then that way you don't have to calculate, 30 moves ahead, which is, how long it can take to play the W technique with a knight and bishop. You just can know instantly, okay, knight and bishop endgame, that's winning. I'm gonna trade down into that and then figure it out from there. So yeah, good questions. Okay, so yeah, for the last game, we are going to look at how Magnus Carlsen is able to grind out a win from a seemingly equal or slightly better position. All right, so let me share screen. Okay, so let me just skip ahead a little bit so we get to the end game. Okay, so in this position, it's White's move. Carlsen has the white pieces. He's playing against Fabiano Caruana. We can see it's equal material, equal pawns. Both sides have a dark square bishop. Both sides have a rook. So take a couple minutes here to try to evaluate this position. So, like I said, think about things like, is time important here? Tempi, is that a relevant factor? Um, Stuff like king safety versus king activity. Um, any potential pawn weaknesses that we can target for our opponents. So stuff like that. So take a couple minutes. Let's go. 2 minutes. Yeah, try to. Oh, thanks. Oh, yeah, not like that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, before we start talking about moves, let's just talk about the general stuff. So, yeah, so why don't you start? What's some general stuff about this position? Good. Yeah, so White's king is much more active and Black's king is very, very passive. Um, so what do you think? Is it more about king safety or king activity in this kind of endgame? Yeah, activity, right? Maybe for the black king, it's actually more about king safety. Like maybe even there's some positions like we can try to get a rook around somewhere with the weak dark squares. There might be some instances where this is actually more of a king safety issue. Yeah. And plus we have so much more space than black. It's very difficult for this king to get out. Um, All right, any other general things here? So like is Tempe an important factor here? Yeah. Yes, yeah. So there's some pawn tension here. We got more space on the king side. Um, what would be a potential pawn weakness as well? What would be a potential pawn weakness? Surya.
For us or for the opponent?
Well, for both.
Yeah, I think for black, the B6 pawn can be weak.
Uh-huh.
And then for white, maybe the A4 pawn
Yep,
or
definitely.
G4. I'm not sure.
Yep. Uh-huh. Yeah, the base of the pawn chain and also this isolated pawn, definitely. Any other potential weaknesses? There's one weakness that we haven't spotted yet that Magnus did spot. Um, yeah. Okay, the square. Yeah, we could definitely try posting a bishop on f6 at some point and create, like I was mentioning before, create some havoc for this king. Maybe some mating nets are possible if this rook moves. Yeah. Okay, so the h6, yeah, the h6 pawn. This is a potential weakness. It's fixed on a dark square, and we have a dark squared bishop. Um, so definitely some potential here. So now that we've established kind of the general principles here, has anyone come up with a move or like a plan that can try to target one of these weaknesses? Yeah. We don't want to trade this pawn. Yeah. We don't want to trade that pawn. This bishop kind of needs to be here for the moment. Morgana.
Maybe we could try king d3.
King d3. Okay. Yeah, to try to have this pawn be defended and then with the idea of going here, but that kind of deactivates the king, right? Like we kind of actually want to we'd rather step forward with the king, I think. Okay, Ishan.
I feel we should take and somehow like swing our rook to the h file, then bring our bishop after this pawn is protected at some point.
Okay, so you're looking at this guy, right?
Yeah,
Yes. Okay, great plan. Great plan. But how would you use your rook to target this pawn? What are you thinking?
trying to blockade it by like first taking on g6.
Okay.
Then like when he takes back, we take his pawn, then rook takes, then rook h5. After protecting like this g4 pawn.
I see. I see. Okay. Yeah, that would kind of activate the rook though, right? That would activate their rook. So you have the right idea, but maybe the wrong execution. The main weakness we want to target is this pawn. This is the fixed weakness. It's not really necessary for us to relieve the tension here. If black ever takes, then the G file will be open, right? Okay, what do you think? Okay, f6, it does give up some light squares. It also, blocks in our own bishop. It's probably not too bad. But yeah, maybe even like G5 at some point would I understand. I think you're trying to maybe swing the bishop over here at some point, but yeah, f6, maybe even the king would be able to step up to e6 or something like that. It gives up some light squares. We kind of want to have the pawns complement our dark squared bishop, where the pawns control the light squares, bishop controls the dark squares. Yeah. G5. Okay, so you're thinking if takes, then you can start pushing. I see. And then go here. So is this gonna be enough? Yeah, it still is pretty awkward though. Like it's an interesting idea. I'll give you that. That's not something I looked at. G5. Maybe you can take like this though. And then if you take, then like this. Yeah, maybe taking on H5. Do you have an idea after that? Yeah, so maybe taking on h5 would be the refutation. Okay, any other ideas? I gave you guys a hint. This is the main weakness we want to target. Maybe a little we're kind of helping black activate their rook by trying to go for it immediately like this. What do you think? Yeah. Ah, very creative. So bishop g8, maybe just king g8. And then you don't have time for f6, right? Because your bishop's saying. It was very creative though, very creative. All right, in the back. You're raising your hand, right? No? Oh, okay. Um, all right, so any other ideas? Morgana, you have another idea?
Maybe F6.
Yeah, f6 we talked about. I think maybe this might be a little bit premature. Like can we go just we can also is g5 horrible? It's probably not best, but my idea is that I'm just blocking in any ideas of playing bishop e3 and then trying to take this pawn, and then next up I can just play king e8 and then try to bring my king onto these light squares and try to target this pawn. Also, yeah, there's rook a4 on the cards as well. But yeah, first thing we should probably do is prevent any back rank kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, so in the game, Carlson played the move rook to b1. Who can explain his idea now? Now that we see the first move, what's the plan? Yeah. Yeah, so now we have ideas of taking and then playing rook to h1, and we can see now this is a big target. There's no king g7. There's no h5. So yeah, this is a um very hard plan to stop. Yeah. G5. Mhm. So like here and then G5. Yeah, that would just create more weaknesses. Yeah. Okay, so rook b1. Yeah, so this is played in the game. Okay, so can we just take here? Free pawn? Ah, what's wrong? Yeah. Yeah, you always want to be careful. Even like in the end game, there's still tactics that you have to still be vigilant. All right. Okay, so king d5, that gets out of this. So now it is a threat to take. Here, takes. And bishop d8. And how would you continue now if you were white? And this is another position where we're thinking, okay, what trades would be beneficial for whites? What trades would be favorable? Therun.
F6.
Good, yeah, f6. Nice. So f6 is played, and bishop takes f6. Now what was the next move? What's the idea here? Why give up that pawn? Yeah. Yeah, rook takes h6, and now we force a simplification. Obviously the king and pawn in game would be losing if you just lead the bishop here. So bishop e7, and now what's
Trade. Trade.
yeah, rook trade, right? Rook
Yeah.
trade is favorable. Good. Now yeah, we can take immediately, or as Carlson did, we can just play king b5. Here. C4. We can take this at any point. Takes. Offering a trade is good for us. Okay, but we still need to be slightly careful. Like if, for example, we manage to win this bishop, but they can take this pawn, like they can sacrifice their bishop for this pawn. Would that be winning for white? Right, we have the wrong color pawn, right? Has to be on the same square as the bishop. So this is again where theoretical endgame understanding comes into play in a practical endgame. So we don't want to allow that bishop to sacrifice itself for our c pawn. So how do we win this then? How do we win this? So Carlsen starts maneuvering his king around to the other side of the pawn. And now can we just push?
Nope.
Yeah, it would not just be a theoretical draw, it would be a stalemate. Yeah, if takes, and then we take with the king. Okay, so instead, bishop to e7. What's the idea with bishop e7? Morgana.
To play bishop d8 and bishop takes d8 and then king takes and you promote.
Good. So let's say king to a7. Then bishop d8 here. Okay. Then we just push, right? Push, and then there's no stopping. No stopping it. Good. Yeah, so in this position after bishop e7, Caruana resigns. Okay. So yeah, these were just some examples of practical endgames played by grandmasters, but yeah, you'll see these types of endgames in your own games, where it's just like equal material, but that doesn't mean it's drawish. As we saw, like even if it's only a slight edge for one player or even an equal position, there's still a lot of room to outplay your opponent. And that's kind of like the main takeaway I want you guys to take away from this lesson is, you know, just because we're in an end game with equal material doesn't mean it's a draw. Keep playing, especially, there's these other factors you should think about, like time. Is my opponent under time pressure? They might make some mistakes. Also, some practical decision making, um, if my opponent's lower rated than me, I can take a little bit more risk, right? Um, and yeah, also playing like Carlsen. Carlsen's like the best practical end game player of all time. And he has a fighting spirit. So playing like that, just fighting to the very ends. Don't offer draws too early. You don't really learn a lot from offering draws, first of all, and you're not going to win if you offer a draw, right? So, yeah, try in your own games, try just playing a little bit longer and fighting a little bit more. Okay. All right. Any questions before we wrap up this lecture? No? Okay, so then we'll say goodbye to everyone on Zoom and then we'll play a game based on an end game position. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
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 Thanks. Bye.
We're gonna play an end game position. First we will. And then you guys will play a real game.